Too many jams. So about all things 20-year-old.
With help from friends, experts, and our own personal experiences.
We hope to shed some light on those issues that leave our age group lost and confused. Have you ever started a tech company and raised money and hired 12 people and done all that stuff?
Nope.
Me either.
Have you ever heard of a company called Sherpa?
Well, yeah, we have today because we talked with Max Tremaine, the CEO of Sherpa, and David Riley, a friend of ours from school who now works at Sherpa, set the whole thing up, and a really cool episode, really smart guy, amazing what he's been able to do, and he was just so casual talking about it. But
yeah, super intelligent dude. And as we found out after the show, guy reads a lot. So
guy reads a lot.
It explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, so the episode starts out, we talk a little bit about his company, a little bit about his story and how a guy goes from basically skiing and riding mountain bikes to being the CEO and co-founder of basically a tech company.
Tech company that has now just started raising a bunch of capital through VCs. So
yeah.
It's cool, interesting stuff.
And we talk about that for a bit, and then we just end up shooting the shit at the end, and he has some funny hot takes on some of our previous episods, let's say that.
Oh, yeah, he listened back to to some of the early days episodes, and he's got an opinion on the rent versus buy. So.
And David was nice enough to join us on this pod and chat a little bit about himself. He's got a funny story too about how he likes to get jobs, and I think we have to go deeper into that on a different episode because I feel like he's got his own treasure chest of good stuff. But we won't take too much more time. Get into the episode here. Brought to you by True History, obviously, and Wrist and Rye. But just enjoy it. Have a good time. See you there. It goes another 20-year-old. Holy shit, I hate those guys. Gotta hate 20-year-olds. Fuck these guys. Somebody help these 20-year-olds. It's time to figure it out, Ricky. Don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me.
Hello. Welcome. And welcome to Too Many Jams, a show about all things 20-year-old.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
We already did that because we've done the intro at home. So let's go again.
Let's go again. All right. So today we are on site with start this once more.
I normally do the intros. I'm like, I like throwing him on the spot though. Yeah, get him out of his comfort zone.
Today we're on site at at
one more time. You got this.
Today we're on site at Sherpa at their
Workspace One.
Their co-working space, and we're joined by David and Max. Max is the founder of Sherpa. Yeah.
And David is a janitor here. And it's a really funny relationship. No, Rob, I'm going to leave all that stuff in the intro, by the way, because I think that's a hilarious start to the podcast. But welcome, guys. Thanks so much for coming on, and let's crack a beer. Let's get talking.
Perfect.
So you'll notice we're drinking a new flavor of True History.
Not Max though.
Not Max. He's a Pilsner guy.
Yeah, he's an OG.
But we're gonna try this new flavor and give it a little on-air sip test here.
This isn't even on markets yet, but the True History guys dropped off some fresh 12 Swans, which is a pale ale, and check out that packaging.
Is that not delicious?
It's really cool.
That's really good.
Very nice.
Like, it's a good beer. A lot of people ask, they're like, "Oh, you're sponsored by a beer. Is it actually good? It's your friend's beer." And I'm like, "Yeah. Like, why would I put so much on the line and be like, it's so good if I was just lying? It's really good.
It's so
Wouldn't
good.
be your friend if it wasn't good beer either.
I wouldn't be friends with people who make bad beer." So we just want to give them a shout out. You can get it at restaurants and bars now that has True History, but in the LCBOs, it'll probably be more like April. Their Farmer in the Sky Pilsner, which Max is drinking, is in stores now. But you guys, you have a beer on tap here in your office.
Yeah, we get Collective Arts.
Oh, make sure your mic stays up by
Yeah,
your
we get Collective Arts on a new one on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
I think bi-weekly.
It's nice, yeah.
Do you guys ever run out? Like, keep it up.
Yeah, there was the keg fiasco of last week.
Yeah, we do run out. They've had some turnover in their receptionists, and everybody's going nuts. If people aren't able to print, that's fine. Not able to get in, whatever. People are going nuts about the beer. So
Max is the keg guy now.
Yeah, I changed the kegs now.
You guys are pretty big beer drinkers?
Yeah, pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say you split between time on the Peloton bike and times having pints here?
Roughly even.
Roughly even.
Yeah.
You ever mix the two at the same time?
I think you have. I think I've seen you on that.
Just hydrate with collective arts while you're.
That's not my general thing, but yeah.
Special meeting.
It's funny. Those Pelotons are intense, but that's a whole other topic on their own. We want to know. We want to know a little bit. Just give us a little preview about the company you founded, because I think one, founding a company, amazing. Two, especially to have staff and investors, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about Sherpa.
Yeah, definitely. So we set out. I mean, like the grand vision is we want to make it easier for people to travel. Right now, a major source of anxiety for people is going through customs and immigration when they arrive somewhere. And we make that whole process a lot easier by helping people understand what visa they need and then helping them apply for it. But our kind of road to get here has been pretty long. Myself and Ivan, my co-founder, we got started thinking about this around 2014. We'd both had kind of issues understanding and applying for visas. He'd overstayed visas before. I've had to
Did he get
skip
deported?
trips because of visas. He's from Russia. He had to travel with a Russian passport.
That's tough.
And that is pretty tough. He has a Canadian passport now, which he's
congrats.
very happy about.
Yeah.
We started out thinking it was an issue, just kind of built some little applications to help people out with their own applications. And then a couple of years ago, so like 2016, we started facilitating the whole process, made a really clean application. 2017, we decided we were going to take all of the operations in-house and do everything ourselves in a very kind of, using whatever technology was available to do it in the best way possible. And then we ended up going the venture funding route. Our first major investment was from the former CEO and former CMO of Expedia, Eric Blatchford.
Ever heard of it?
Yeah. Really amazing people.
Yeah.
Knew a lot about the travel industry. Ivan and I weren't from the travel industry. We just kind of found an issue and tried to solve it. Those guys brought a lot into the company. And then this year we did our seed round, led by True Ventures out in San Francisco. They've been fantastic to work with too. And we've been beating all of our goals, exceeding all of our expectations. It's been amazing. It's really a problem that people have.
I wonder what that feels like, beating and exceeding goals.
Seriously, right?
Can we take
Maybe one day?
Can we take a quick step back? I always like to know not just what you're doing, but like how someone, like it's going to be a little condensed. It's going to be hard to do. It's going to be a bit more romanticized, but how someone even meanders their way to this point. Like even just like, in kind of a brief history of even coming from middle school, who you thought you'd be in high school, university, kind of what you studied, where you thought you'd go, your parents' kind of pressures, all that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's been a lot of jams. It's been a lot of different stuff. I started out like, me and Ivan, we were both really big skiers. I was a big cyclist, and high school, I just figured that was all I was ever going to do. We were in a high school computing and arts program together. We were on the physics team together.
So you guys have been friends for a while.
Our big thing. Oh yeah, we've been friends. I think he says I was his first friend in Canada.
He says that every day.
Yeah, most days. Yeah.
He likes to make it known.
Yeah. We've known each other since we were 15.
This is my first friend in Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, that's usually how I'm introduced. But the big thing was really for us was skiing and biking. And then when I was 17, I had just a catastrophic cycling injury. I fell about a story in motion onto my right foot. My tibia and fibula separated around my foot, like so the bones in my leg hit the ground. It was
how did this happen? How did you follow a story?
Was it a bend? Like, did you go off the side of a bend?
No. This was this would have been off of a jump, and it was
you were doing dirt jumping.
Yeah.
I was picturing like road cycling, like Tour de
same.
France.
No. This was This was I don't actually remember much at all about what happened. I basically woke up on the way to the hospital.
So was this like Whistler? Was this local? Was this like?
No, at the time I was working at Muskoka Woods in the summers as a cycling instructor. And it was so there, sick. And it was really shitty because I don't really remember it, but apparently I was just screaming obscenities at a group of kids. And they're kind of trapped with me, right? So it's like wow, the guy who's in charge is like in pieces on the ground. What am I supposed to do? Your counselors,
you lift up his leg. And
It was
that's so wild.
Maybe not as extreme, but I used to do something quite similar up at I don't know if you know Kilku.
Okay.
Kilku Camp.
Yeah,
I ran the whitewater and mountain biking program there.
Yeah. You weren't getting 20-foot airs though.
No, I wasn't. I definitely wasn't hitting jumps or anything. But half of the program was mountain biking through some trails that are on the reserve, and then the other half was whitewater kayaking, and it was super fun.
Where were these jumps? They were by Muskoka Woods.
Like they have all their own facilities.
Rich.
It's a beautiful setup.
So much money there. I love it.
That's why you gotta go. That's why you gotta go work there. You don't have to pay to be there. But it's a fantastic setup what they've got there, and but I mean that for me was a real catalyst. I kind of realized I was doing just enough to get by with school, enough to kind of make my parents happy, but then I realized this can't be my life anymore. I've got to really figure something out.
How long was the rehab?
Rehab, like all together with physio, it lasted longer than a year to really get things figured out again, to get back to a decent range of motion.
Jeez,
it was really tough.
And how is it? Like today?
Yeah, it's fine. I got gnarly scars. Like I've got 2 plates, 2 pins, and 6 screws still in there. This is the big one.
Oh yeah. Just to describe it for the camera here, just like both sides of his ankles, you got about a 6-inch scar going up.
Yeah. So now it's just about better. I still have issues with impact, so I can't ride or ski the way I really want to anymore. But I think a lot of that is for good though, right? Like I figured, I really have to go figure out what I'm going to do in my life after this.
So you had no idea when you were at camp. You had a technical background, but you really loved to ski and bike, and you thought you could maybe just find a life.
I thought I'd be like a designer for like a ski company or something like that,
cool,
or something like that. And I'd be able to like live in this stuff. And then after my injury, I was like, no, I'm not gonna feel good just being kind of a part of one of these industries. I gotta find something that I can just go kind of do. So got really into studying again. I had a great high school law teacher, made me really want to study law. So I went to Laurier, studied political science and psychology.
Political science major as well.
You know what? You guys have a lot in common, by the way. I'm going to get to that later.
Yeah.
Should probably just hire me at the company.
Are you looking for a job?
Do you need any on-staff podcasters? Or?
Musician plus bartender. You know what? I can serve the collective arts, actually. I got my smart serve.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That's a good proposition. I like that.
In many other ways, I'd probably be helpful other than the actual work
on
the company.
Business, making money, stuff like that. We don't know yet. We haven't done it, but
culture.
You're very honest. That's a desirable trait for sure.
So you went to Laurier for, was this a law program?
No, this was political science and psychology.
Just to get okay.
While I was there, I really kind of it really kind of revealed my love of statistics. I'd always liked stats, but I kind of realized they have a fantastic institute there, the Laurier Institute for the Study of Public Opinion and Policy, LISPOP, super long acronym. But they have just an amazing group of statisticians in their poli-sci department that really helped me kind of cultivate that interest. So I did like an undergrad research paper on the effects of question wording on response validity. So it's like, can you make people think completely different things based on how you word a question and stuff like that. I started the Laurier Student Poll, which is still Canada's only student-run polling authority. That was really cool.
What was the consensus on that?
I was able to reproduce a study that had been done in the 80s around this. It was kind of, there's not been a lot of study done. Like it kind of makes sense, right? Like if you use stronger words, people are probably going to associate whatever you're saying with stronger ideas. But there have not been a lot of studies that actually try to see kind of how far you can take this. And I was seeing, what little kind of modulations can you make on wording to, and does that kind of show up the same way that a big modulation shows up? And I was able to show that, the big modulations make a difference, the little ones don't. I think it'd be really interesting kind of set of research to follow. But I love that. Like, I really, really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed all my stats stuff. I ended up doing an undergrad in econ as well because I couldn't find enough stats classes.
So you did
kind of the opposite
like
of all
triple undergrad?
I was doing all the opposite of like all the other people I was going to school with. Everybody was like, "Fuck, I gotta take a stats class." I was like, "Man, I need more stats classes." So that was a really good time. And so I started thinking, yeah, I'm definitely going to do law. I ended thinking, no, I've got to do something in like stats and quantitative analysis. So I went into, actually, I while I was there, and actually going back to like after my injury in high school, I did an internship in high school at a really small company. It was like 5 people. They were an offshoot of a company that I knew about just from family, friends. And they were selling software to hedge fund managers, and I was doing cold calling. So I was just like a 17-year-old cold calling hedge fund managers, and they gave me like the absolute worst region to call. I was calling like Texas and Arkansas. Like, if you're a hedge fund in Texas and Arkansas,
good luck.
It's interesting. And so and they all knew each other. They were all all the people I was calling were all a part of the same like golf clubs and stuff like that. So I called. I remember. I shouldn't say his name. I remember calling this guy Buck.
Okay.
And he was like, "What the hell are you doing calling me? Da da da. I'm a real busy guy." And I'm like, "What do hedge fund managers do?" And he just like drops the phone on me. I call literally 3 people later on the list. And he's like, "You the guy called Buck?"
I heard about you. We know about you around here.
Yeah, it was really funny. And then I worked in market research, and then the same people who'd started that company were finding a little bit of traction in a really similar product. And I went, they didn't really have anyone doing marketing or any sort of analysis on how the kind of business was operating. So I left. I was at Nielsen doing market research. I left to go back there just because it was always something I found more exciting, was the small team, figuring out what product to sell, really trying deeply to understand who their customers were and what was going on. So I went there, and around that same time, I reconnected with Ivan, who I knew just from high school and skiing. And
he's like, "Hey, first Canadian friend."
Yeah, exactly.
Great to see you. It's been a while.
Well, he was an amazingly like prolific designer and developer of digital products, which is something I didn't really have any experience in. And so I knew, like, this is a really cool space, really interesting stuff to do. I should really connect with Ivan. We should try to find an interesting, rabbit hole to go down in this space.
So just to pause you,
yeah, sure.
All these transitions and all this stuff, like when you hurt your foot and you made a transition, you get into school and you're making these decisions. Were you having decision anxiety? Were things kind of just going down a natural path? Did you feel like you're just going where the flow was going, or were you making conscious kind of stops?
Yeah, it depends. Like, the ankle was a really big shock. And that kind of, woke me up and said, like, you've really got to focus. The shift into stats was really fairly sudden, but also it was a similar thing in a nice way where, I remember I had my first stats class that had a research option, and I was like, wow, like, this is actually super fun. Like, I could see myself doing this. And then market research was like, this is literally the best paying job I'm going to find in stats.
Nice.
Kind of thing. And then, the move into a smaller company was just sitting there. And I thought Nielsen was a great company, but I didn't like the environment. You didn't have a lot of, you weren't able to, have a lot of say in terms of how stuff was presented. You didn't really get to see how stuff was consumed and understand like how things should be changing. A lot of things were really set, and they would have been set like decades ago.
Yeah.
And people were kind of operating the way they'd operated, and the people were doing a great job at doing that. It just wasn't for me. moving into so that took a while, where it was like eating at me a little bit. And I was like, no, all the people I really look up to and admire have kind of started their own companies or are doing really kind of interesting new stuff. So I've kind of got to move out of that. That probably took me like probably 8 months to a year of just mulling over.
So it's kind of like, I'd say more of like a learn by doing. Like you see a couple steps, you choose the one that seems like the best one. You didn't spend too much time mulling it. Yeah. And then you started doing it, and then you started to learn more about what you like. You learned you like stats in school. When you got there, you didn't know you'd do that, but you kind of landed in a general program. And then leaving, worked at a big company, realized you didn't like it. Okay, I'm going to look at a smaller company, meet up with Ivan. Now you're here, and you're like, this guy's got a cool set of skills. You know you can work in a small company environment. You know what it looks like. And you say, okay, let's see if we can invent something. Let's see if we can see a place where we can use our skills. How does that then develop? Were you traveling? Were you needing visas?
Yeah, I mean, it had been something that had come up with. Actually, it was funny. It kind of hit us in the face. We'd come up with a few different ideas for ways that we could kind of help people out. We were just doing it kind of evenings and weekends. Let's try to build some cool stuff, do things really lean, do some product tests and stuff like that. And we had a few of these ideas. One of them, I was driving down to a Wolverines game, and we crossed the border into Michigan, and one of the people in the car says, "Oh, you can drink in public in Michigan." I was like, bullshit. Can't do that. I don't know who you heard that from. You're completely wrong. We Googled, can you drink outside in Michigan? And couldn't find anything on Google that was real. And we didn't find the real law until we got back. We were like, oh man, we should make an application that will you just enter where you're going and put in a couple little things and it just tells you what the law is. So I built the database for that, where I indexed a bunch of these laws, cannabis and gun and drinking laws, things you'd want to know, road tripping.
Yeah, can I bring my gun? Can I smoke weed and drink while I'm in Michigan? That's what I want to know.
And then Ivan built a really cool app around this database where it's if literally every time it would it would see that you crossed the border, and
he's how to make new Canadian friends across this border.
Or it was if you crossed the border from Nevada into California, it'd be woo, you can smoke weed, but put your guns away. Kind of thing. It was really fun. It was cool.
Your coding knowledge, is that from high school?
Well, that's an interesting thing. A lot of these skills that I've just kind of built over the years, the coding knowledge was mostly from when I was at Nielsen. I was starting to learn coding in Python and stuff like that. A lot of stuff about databases.
So that was a statistician's kind of skill base at the time that they said you're definitely looking
kind of
this.
reapplying that to products now.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, Rob.
I was just gonna say it reminds me a bit of the Social Network.
Keep that
the beginning of the Social Network, where he's like, oh, I want to do this, hot or not, and he just hops in there and does it the one night, crushing a couple beers.
So basically, you're gonna be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know if you want to be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. He's kind of universally hated now for whatever reason. But so that product, we put it out and people were like, oh, this is fun. This is interesting. We were having trouble keeping it on people's phone, getting them to download it. And then we started asking, we had some users, and we went out and we talked to 100 users to see what are we doing wrong? What can we figure out here? And we heard 70 times, if I'm traveling, the laws I want to know are the visa and customs laws.
Nice.
It happened so often that we were like, oh, wow. You know what? We've had issues with visas. All these people are having issues with visas. We really got to do something in the visa space. So it wasn't some grand vision or some really interesting insight we had. It
never is, right? It never is. People that have these companies, it started out with, I want to know what good-looking girls go to Harvard or whatever school was. Yeah. He did not know he would have the biggest social network in the world.
It's always a pivot.
Side note, a friend of ours was working in the States and was deported because of visa stuff, and she really wanted to stay in. There was a lot of confusion. So she made just a community.
Yeah.
Just a community of travelers to talk and share their knowledge. Amazing. But I wonder if she'd be someone to connect you guys with, because if you have the tool for it, and she's got a community, but it's Canadian, it's Sydney.
Oh, really?
Her brother just won a Stanley Cup. He was the goalie for the St. Louis Blues.
Damn.
Yeah. But I definitely, I'll see if that's something we can connect you to. We talk to her
I
often.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Can you tell us about the name Sherpa?
Yeah, the name is kind of funny too, and that was probably kind of a long process.
Everything
We've
is
had like multiple names. It started out as like, so the first thing we did was called Every Law, and then we had a few different names, and one was called Borderlines, and we really liked the idea of borderlines because what we were trying to do is like erase borders, right? It's like if you're traveling, you don't have to worry about borders. We'll deal with all the visas. But then we looked it up. We were trying to do our initial kind of, figure out all of our kind of trademark stuff. And we found that there were just a few companies named Borderline. Some of them were like quite similar to what we were doing, where it was not doing the same thing, but similar enough where it was like, okay, this is going to be a challenge in the future kind of thing. And we were sitting there and we're like, okay, well, we don't need to settle on a name for the rest of our lives right now. Let's literally just find the easiest name that we're not going to get a copyright challenge on. So we were talking to this IP lawyer, and he was like, well, and you can't copyright like the names of, and I think it was like places and like groups of people. And we were both like, Sherpa. It's just like, it's a group of people, and we both love the mountains, obviously. So we're like, love the stories of like Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, where it's like, Hillary's the guy getting all the glory, and Norgay is like carrying his bag in the background kind of thing.
It's like the camera crews on like Deadliest Catch.
Yeah, we saw that image and we were just like, that's so us, like somebody's going out, they're getting all the glory of travel, and we're kind of carrying their documents in the background. So we loved that, and we expected it to be like we didn't expect it to stick. Like we expected it to be a temporary name while we were figuring things out, and we just could never find a better name.
I like it.
I like it too.
I think it's very suiting.
I think names, as long as they mean something to you guys, I think that's it. You can give anything meaning. And then what my next question I wanted to ask is, okay, so you're transitioning this company. People are asking for visas. You have users, and so did you keep that user base and then just basically take that database model towards visa stuff? At what point do you then say we have a business that requires investors? Like, what are the natural progressions of a startup after user feedback?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it came down to just analyzing what was happening. So, we found with our first kind of couple hundred applications it was highly transactional. People weren't coming back after they'd applied. And actually, we found now that looking at it 2 years later, a lot of people actually do. They'll go apply for a Turkish visa with us, come back a year later and apply for an Indian visa. It's not a common thing, right? Like nobody's gonna sit on our app. Nobody's gonna go to our application every day to see what
it's not Instagram.
Rwandan entry requirements are and stuff like that. So we were kind of in this mode where we're like, all right, we got to find our like scalable channel, basically, and we spent, if we had the product set up, midway through or the end of 2015, we spent the better part of 2 years trying to figure out what that scalable channel was going to be. And then, we found a couple of them where it was like we could set up partnerships with travel companies that were really going to work out. We took the first, the first person we took on outside of the two of us was Jake, who hired David.
Nice.
He was our sales guy. We were just dismal at sales. It was
you guys were just analyzing everything. You're like, what are the numbers?
I have a story. It was crazy. We had our first conversation with an airline, and we're like, airlines, they'll be a big deal. So I put together this big report on like how it was going to affect their business and all this different stuff. And Jake's like, yeah, I love what you guys are doing. I'd love to give you some advice. Let me sit in on that sales call. So I'm like, yeah, sweet. And he was working. He was a very well-paid salesperson. Like it was very slim chance we were going to get this guy on the team. And he sat in on this call. I get on. People are like, yeah, I'm really excited to hear about this. Like, let us know about it. And I'm like, the best place to start is probably the appendix, because I'm thinking like these guys are going to want to really know deeply that all of these numbers actually make sense. And after me sitting there and talking about how we got to all these numbers for 20 minutes, they just did not want to hear anything about our company. And not
everyone shares your enthusiasm for statistics.
And we get off this call, and Jake is just like, all right, I've got to help you guys out. Like it was actually perfect.
But he saw obviously that it was a good idea.
Oh yeah, like it was just the fact that they would get on a call with us was enough to say that they were interested in solving this problem. They said that they were interested in solving this problem. They just didn't want these like ridiculous Canadian eggheads to do it for them. So that was kind of a big change for us, was having someone to then sell the product, because it was clear that we were going to have to move from selling travelers to selling to travel companies. And then, once that happened, that leads to, once we have real clients interested, then investors become interested.
They can see the growth.
They can
if
see
you
what's
can do it with
going
one
on.
company, you can do it with a few. You can do it with, and
they're the ones that want to see the analysis. Like it's really good to. It's a really like the kind of skills that you need early on are the kind of deep market analysis type experience. You need someone who can actually build products, and you need someone who can sell things. And we kind of had all that together. Investors wanted to see what's the total addressable market, how are you going to get there, what are your unit economics going to be, how are those going to change, what kind of team do you need to do this. I was able to put a lot of that stuff together, and we had Ivan building and we had Jake selling. It was kind of a perfect storm for what we were doing once we had found out that people were actually interested in applying for visas.
That's a really cool story.
And the product essentially is, people go on the website, do they fill out a form and tell you like sort of their travel
at its
plans?
most basic level just takes information about a traveler and turns it into a travel visa. So there are a few different kind of forms for that on the front end. Like we have a lot of different ways that we can work with companies, but like the thing that separates us from like a visa services company is that for us, it's all technology behind the scenes, right? Like if you're applying for it, like if you're a Norwegian going to the States, a lot of people don't know they need anything, but you need a US ESTA. They have like a program you need to just kind of clear yourself with if you're European traveling to the States. Any service company or travel agency would go type in all your stuff. What we do is we serve, hey, here's the detail we need about a traveler to get them an ESTA. We take that in, we push out the ESTA confirmation numbers
while they're buying the ticket.
So it's so it's like, that's the front end can be as straightforward as that. It can be as complex as like, we have a form that we serve to people because we can't just kind of capture their data otherwise. There are a few different ways.
ESTA, can you clarify?
Electronic System for Travel Authorization. It's like literally just a website that the U.S. government has where it's like, you give us your name and we'll tell you whether or not you're on a watch list.
Are you a terrorist?
Did you know what ESTA was?
No, but I didn't need to know what it was.
Yeah, there are like 60 countries now that have like some equivalent system to like an ESTA, whether it's like an ETA or an eVisa. Canada has an ETA. We have the same thing here for Europeans traveling here. There are going to be like 120 countries in the next 2 years that have these kind of requirements. It's kind of crazy.
Again, probably something investors see and are like, this is great for you. Yeah. Everyone's getting more scared and putting these systems in place.
That's right.
And that's great, man. Like getting investors, people who believe in you will give you their money. The thing is, this might be controversial to say, I don't think it's as hard as people seem once you've done all that you just said.
Well, you can ask them what they're looking for, right?
Right.
And a lot of them will have like different things that they're looking for. So I think you really have to, like, the first time you talk to an investor, you got to ask, like, what do you guys look for in a company? Because they'll tell you outright, like, I'm looking for a company that's going to have X number of returns on capital. I want to see, what you're spending on, and like, whether or not there's a opportunity to have a kind of moat around your product. There are all these different things they'll look for. They'll tell you what they are, and then you've just got to kind of say, this is how we're going to have these things.
It's a good exercise too, in because you want to know the answers to that as well.
Oh yeah.
Like, are you? where's your paycheck coming from? You want to know that you can do all this stuff. So it's the same as when we were applying for small funding. You have to put together a little business plan, and it's really about the exercise of making that plan, proving to yourself as well that you can do all that stuff. And it's great. Like, we're sitting in an office. You have your team in there. Yeah. They seem really nice, and I think a lot of time that's also what's enticing to investors is
Yeah.
how you work. You guys obviously had a core good team, and
We went from, we were 3 people in March. We're 12, 13 people now, 14 people now.
Wow.
Including David.
Young Dave, yeah.
David's actually an elder statesman for
I was
by
the
Sherpa
fourth.
turns.
well,
I remember you mentioning that.
So
Yeah.
David, we have a history. We called him Young Davo for a while. But so my old business partner for the jewelry that I'm wearing, that's also sponsored the podcast. Shout out Wrist and Rye. They were cousins, and so he just appears in my life.
And roommates.
Yeah. So he just appears in my life through
With who?
this.
DeLangley.
Oh,
Yeah. Did you know? You didn't know that?
I didn't know
You
you
didn't
guys
know
were
that?
related.
Yeah.
No shit. Okay.
Immediately hit it off. Just
Quickly.
two handsome young gentlemen, you know. And I remember when he was talking about applying for jobs, I always appreciated how weird you did it. You're like, I'm thinking I just, chained myself to their door. So no, you never did that. But like,
No, I did some weird things.
do you have a couple like small highlights before you worked here of how you got some jobs?
Yeah. So the first weird thing I did to get a job was when I got my internship at Taxi, which is an ad agency. I don't know if you know of it, but so it was the first like real job I ever actually got, and I was like, I'm determined to get this thing. I have no background in advertising. I studied environmental science, and that's only because I transferred universities, and I said, let me graduate with whatever degree lets me graduate the quickest. So they threw me in that. So I was like, okay, and I just watched a shit ton of Mad Men.
Yeah.
So I was all hyped up on what would Don Draper kind of do. And so I put together a video. I made my resume, and then I put together a video of showing all the skills that I thought a good account person would need.
And what were some of these skills?
Hardworking. So it was just me doing push-ups shirtless.
I'm serious. Didn't you sit on a fridge too?
Yeah. It was adaptable, and it was just me crouching in the apartment in like it was a horrible video, but in like different filters and different positions and cabinets.
Yo, this is
on the fridge.
hilarious.
Imagine
I have it somewhere.
he's like showing this to us. I'm like, I'm going to send this to a company. And I'm sitting there, and half of me is like, this guy's fucking nuts.
I
And,
cracked an egg in my mouth. Risk taking.
and the other half was like, it's so crazy, just my work.
It worked.
And it worked.
Yeah.
You got it.
I got there. So I worked at Taxi for 4 months on the Canadian Tire account.
It was a summer thing, right?
Yeah, it was just a summer internship
Yeah.
because I had another year of school.
So wait, you send this video in. What was the feedback?
They loved it. They're like, and I remember it being kind of weird because all the other interns had gone through like a program. Like they did a degree to learn accounts and advertising, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And they're all quite a bit older than me, but the weirdest part about that was actually talking to all of my coworkers at like the end of my internship, and they all had bets. They always had bets the first day of which intern would survive the entire summer.
Oh.
And I was the intern they voted would leave the fastest. They're like, this guy doesn't survive.
See, I would be the opposite. If I saw you cracking an egg in your mouth and doing all this stuff, I'm like, this guy's going the distance.
But see, that only went to HR. That didn't make it through HR.
Dude, I would have shared that to my Facebook after.
Do you still have it? I want to see this video.
I can send you the video.
Can you send us a video? I think it'd be hilarious to put on the YouTube.
Yeah. I think I have it on my computer. We'll get it.
So then, how do you get a job with a nice normal company like Sherpa?
It took a while.
Okay.
It took a move to Montreal. So basically, I went back to school after that internship, finished up my degree, and then I wanted to move up, I guess, in my career as quickly as possible.
As you would.
As anyone would. And
Yeah.
so I decided that, against basically everyone in my family telling me it was a horrible idea to work at a bank, because I'm just not a very corporate kind of guy. Went and worked at a bank for a summer. Hated that. That was I mean, for some people it really works. I will say that. I think everyone can agree to that one. But did that.
A bank seems to be a popular young person job.
Because you hear bank, and I think you assume salary.
Yeah.
You get to wear a suit.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
true
God.
as well.
My friends, I think they'll purposely be like, oh, dinner at 7? They'll stay late at the office, and then they'll show up. They're like, "Oh, guys, long day."
But some people love
Loosen up
that.
the tie.
Yeah.
They fucking love it.
it.
You can always tell. Remember we went to dinner the other night for your brother's birthday.
Yeah.
You and me are wearing this
Yeah.
suit, table full of suits, and we're like, you can tell who works.
You're in jorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are the
Wearing
artists
jorts.
here?
You tell who the artists are. Okay, so you're working at the
I'm
bank.
at a bank, and I'm just like, this is miserable. I went, so I spent that summer because it was an internship where they didn't really have me doing anything other than I basically spent the summer cleaning closets. I wasn't learning anything.
You were a janitor.
I was a janitor. For once in my life, I was truly a janitor. And so, but like no one, I realized quickly that no one cared about where I was ever. So I just took that as free reign that I could take, you know, a 3-hour lunch. I could go. But at the beginning, it was just taking 3-hour lunches and hanging out with my buddies that weren't working. And I quickly positioned that into, I really wanted to work again at the taxi, the other agency that I was working at. And so I just basically loitered there for a month and a half straight and just pestered everyone about, can I have a job? Will you hire me again? And I was top of mind for everyone. And nothing was really happening until I was on a road trip that summer at the end of my tenure at the bank in August. So I'm just graduated school. I'm about to finish my banking internship. And I remember getting a bunch of emails from Taxi being like, hey, we have a position for you, but it might require you to move to Montreal. And at this point, I'm in like Nashville or something like that with 5 other buddies.
I was there this summer.
Yeah,
Great time.
Spot. I need to go back every week.
I mean, that might put a toll on your body.
If you need a
but-
visa.
Yeah, I know a guy.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, cool. Like, can you come in and interview? And I had to be like, no, I'm vacationing right now, but I can do any interview you want me to do, like via FaceTime. It's fine. And so I think I had 4 or 5 interviews, but being on a road trip actually worked in my advantage because I always had like a good icebreaker. Could be like, I'm in a van with 5 other dudes. I'm sorry if it's loud. Or
Yeah.
like I'm in Virginia. Check out the mountains behind me. Like it was.
They're like, wow, this guy is such an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Like
It's
gotta
well
have him.
traveled.
And it was for a place in Montreal, like the Montreal office. And so, and they had actually seen that I worked at a bank. And so that was in my advantage too. I had no real experience other than cleaning at that bank, but they're like, this guy knows finance.
Yeah. A lot of finance in those closets.
A lot of finance in those closets. Exactly. But I got that job, agreed to move to Montreal. And that was like an amazing experience because, my dad's family's from Montreal. So I grew up there most summers and reconnected with a lot of old friends. But I kind of started getting really disenamored with advertising after a while, and I realized
It wasn't Mad Men.
it wasn't Mad Men.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and I was getting older. I was slowing down. Maybe I don't know what it was.
Yeah, you think so?
I don't think it was that. But it wasn't Mad Men. It was more so that it was. I've always been a very independent kind of proactive, competitive person, and in the role I was doing, it was really reactive, and I had to kind of pander to a bunch of people all the time, and so that started eating away at me. And
You guys both similar, kind of like you were doing something that's eating away at you. You just knew you had to kind of change up.
yeah. And so
then
I made a jump, and it was a weird jump. My dad got me my next job. So I guess I have a weird history of always getting jobs from weird ways. And I know that sounds really bad, but he was just talking to one of his drinking buddies about how I had these worries about advertising. And the guy literally called me the next day and said that he'll hire me.
And where was this?
It was, I was working remotely. I was still living in Montreal, which if you're not making a lot of money, it's like the closest thing to geo arbitrage that you can get in Canada, because like it's the living cost in Montreal is so much cheaper than Toronto.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really? Because Montreal's such an awesome city.
It's unreal. Best summer in Canada, I would say.
Okay.
Winters are terrible.
Winters are horrible.
Oh.
That's why everyone leaves.
Yeah.
But I did that job for a while, and it was like a marketing consulting. Got kind of a taste of startups. We had to do some marketing for a nutritional startup. That was, it was a very interesting experience because there was no, it just wasn't as big as what I'm in now. And so it was just strange, and it was remote, and I was working with people that were in all different destinations, and so there wasn't a lot of clarity, or there was too much clarity at times. It was just like very confusing. But it allowed me basically to realize I wanted to move back to Toronto and find a new job that wasn't in advertising or marketing. And then that's when I kind of realized that I wanted a new job. And then so how I kind of got looped into Sherpa was I was talking to like one of my very good friends who is now my girlfriend.
Oh.
And she basically connected me with her sister's now husband, who connected me with Jake, the sales guy that Max hired.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting Jake at a bar in Toronto.
Like, that's a long chain.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
a
just
long,
thinking
long
that.
chain.
Yeah.
It's like a weird kind of stepping stone. And I remember he's like, we're going to meet at Bar Hop on King.
You're already pumped.
I'm pumped. I went to the wrong bar hop.
Oh. Okay. And you're like, Jake?
I'm like, Jake. He's
Somebody's
like,
like, yeah, what up? You're like, what's up, man? Great to...
He's literally like, I'm on the second floor. And I go to the bar hop on King. And there is no second floor to the bar hop on King. And I'm just kind of frantic. I'm like, this feels like my shot to get a job. I know it's a young company. There's not a lot of people there. It sounds like a good opportunity for me. I've already fucked it up. Text him, hey man, just realized there's 2 bar hops. Gonna be a bit late. So I run in, I'm like out of breath. And I remember sitting down and he's just like, he at this point he had a man bun and a big beard.
Nice.
And he looks like I don't know what the name of the character is in The Hobbit, but like that intense guy with the main Hobbit.
It's not Legolas.
No. It's not. No, it's from the Hobbit movies. Not Lord
Oh, not Aragorn. Aragorn.
Yeah, no,
No,
not
okay.
Gimli.
From
You're
the
thinking
Hobbit.
Gimli.
No, I'm thinking of the handsome swordsman.
Oh, you're thinking of Aragorn. but
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. That was it.
But like a bushy beard, like lumberjack kind of
Okay.
beard. I'm like, fuck, this guy's intense. And then we just kind of sit there in silence for 45 seconds. I don't know where to start. And then we chat. And it was like a good chat. It had nothing to do with work.
I just wanted to know if you could hang.
Yeah, I think he wanted to know if I could hang.
Yeah.
I think I passed the test because then I got a text through a text that basically said like, hey, he liked you. He wants to see you again in 3 weeks. And I think that you and him were in Singapore, or you were in Atlanta, or you guys were traveling somewhere.
Yeah, we were traveling all over the place.
San
But yeah,
Fran.
from our side, yeah, he's, what we were looking for basically was someone it was getting really serious really quickly on the sales side, so we needed someone to take charge of the top of the funnel so that Jake could focus more on deals and closer to the bottom of the funnel.
I didn't know what a
And
funnel
he was
was.
like, we just need somebody.
Still don't know what it
we just
is.
need somebody who can talk, somebody who's willing to kind of learn some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So you proved that you could talk after that 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's your current job, your current
My
role
current
right
job,
now?
yeah, this
He's
is
a
my
Is
first
the
funneler.
sales guy.
It's
You're a
more
funneler.
involved now. Like David's really grown in the role. Like when you started out,
Thanks,
you didn't have
Max.
any sales experience really, and now you've got you really understand how the first few parts of the sales process go. It's been really cool to watch.
I'm really curious of what it's like to work at a 12-person
It was
startup.
4-person, man.
Full 4-person. Okay.
It's my second
four,
office
yeah.
as well. Like
Yeah.
in this role since March, this is our second office. We were in somewhere else before this.
So just like what's it like being that close to the action, like seeing everything going on, just like showing up to work and like you're over there on a standing desk, I'm assuming, working
Yeah,
on
always.
the make or break deal, and you're calling some people. Like, what's that feeling like to be part of that?
It feels pretty wild. We don't do a lot of calling because of the time zones.
Mhm.
And so we schedule all of our emails to go out so they land in people's inboxes
Okay.
early in the morning.
Boomerang.
Boomerang, yeah.
Yeah, I think Gmail has a feature now though.
We use the Gmail feature of it.
I could work here, you know. I'm kidding.
But like actually, if we step back, I remember my first interview with Max. They were as underprepared as I was.
Well, yeah, like you were the third. We'd hired 3 people before. We'd had to kind of restructure the business, so we took it back down to 3 people when we decided we were going to go away from B2C. So we hadn't done a lot of hiring, and we definitely hadn't done a lot of hiring for sales. So we had like a few questions. I remember you had one great answer. Like all your other answers were like, we had shitty questions, so the answers were kind of like,
Dude,
yeah,
Max,
that's a
I
shitty
walked
question.
in and you were barefoot.
I'm still often barefoot, yeah.
And that
But,
was the first thing I said. We're all standing there. There's 4 of us,
feet.
Jake, Max, Ivan. And I was like,
Yeah.
do you always walk around barefoot in the office? And you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was barefoot.
Startup culture.
It's a good start. I remember being really tired too. I think I just got off a flight or something like that morning.
Yeah.
But I used to ask this question, like, what would you do if I gave you 1,000 leads? And I thought like a bad answer was like, oh, I'd give it 110% and I'd try really hard. And I thought a good answer was like, oh, I'd test different things out and try all this different stuff. And I remember your answer was like I'd probably just chat with Jake for a while. Like, I'm not going to stumble upon the right thing to do with these. I've got to go figure it out. And I was like, oh, that's a great fucking answer.
Nice.
I was like, yeah, you did
Well
really well in
done.
that interview. That was great.
Well, I think it's cool, man, because like I know that your unique way of thinking about stuff.
Mhm.
So wherever you landed, I knew it was going to be an interesting thing. And honestly, I was expecting more marketing. I thought that's where your mind took you.
Yeah.
So it was interesting when you ended up in something like this, but when you start to see the culture and like who you're working with and like the involvement you can have in kind of a little bit of everything and just be around everyone, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot of similar skills to marketing because it boils down to what's the problem that you're trying to solve. And then you can kind of just tweak your writing or tweak your messaging or something like that. So you still have to understand who you're communicating with. It's just more of an individual level as I'm trying to, reach out to this company to sell to them versus in marketing, it's more mass communication.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some funny stories about that though, actually. The very first, I was like, I really want to get like a huge client for us. So I did way too much research on this one guy that worked at this one company to the point that it was pretty creepy.
Like you knew.
I knew that he
names.
was a big cycler. I knew that it was almost cycling season. I knew what he was like an activist for. I knew basically when his birthday was. And I just sent him a cold email with all of this information.
The thing is, that guy probably gets emails like that, but at the end it's asking for money, or else you're gonna release this information.
Oh yeah, I hope Tracy's having a good time at kindergarten.
Yeah. Now you have to send me $5,000, or else
I have your family.
Yeah.
To clarify, target clients for you guys are travel
Businesses.
agencies or
Anyone that
All
sells a
kinds of
ticket,
different travel companies.
Yeah.
Online travel agencies, regular travel agencies, airlines, business travel companies, all kinds of different stuff.
And do you work directly with airline companies today?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so Iceland Air is an example that's setting up in the next couple weeks. We've got a bunch of really exciting ones that we can't talk about yet. But we got loads of different companies working with us now. It's a really cool time.
So
Awesome.
what ended up happening with this gentleman?
I use LinkedIn very actively for my role. And so I've probably, increased my connections on LinkedIn by 1,500 since I started here. And in that time, I've had 2 people unconnect with me, and he's one of them.
After that email went out.
I sent him 8 more emails after that.
Rob.
Yeah. It's right here.
No, you just went after that email went out.
It's right here.
It's
right
not.
Here.
It's not. You just did it again. Just lock it down, my dude.
It's right here, man.
You need a stand for Robbie.
I don't know what it is. I literally think I gotta tape it like
Yeah?
like that. But we'll figure it
I'm
out.
curious, how did you get linked up with the guy from Expedia?
Oh, it was a whole chain of connections. It was we met someone at just a general kind of startup networking event who connected us to one person who was at a company that they'd invested in, who connected us to another person who then connected us to Eric. And then we had an amazing first conversation with him. He had a good friend in Stu who was based in Toronto who could come chat with us, and that's kind of how it went. Yeah, that's how like a lot of these go. It's a connection on a connection on a connection kind of thing.
Yeah. And then for, you spoke about first round seeding for what you guys have been up to. What is that like? Just my personal curiosity. I have no idea how that works.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about doing that?
Yeah,
with
well,
VCs?
a lot of it is one interesting piece of advice I heard was, venture capitalists want to see companies doing really interesting things with really boring deals. So it's like they don't want to see anything weird or interesting in the deal. They want to see that you're doing something cool. The deals usually follow a very strict structure, in terms of like what rights the investor is gaining, what valuations you can expect at different stages of the company in terms of like sales or usership or whatever it is. A book I'd recommend on the subject would be Venture Deals by Brad Feld. He's updated it a few times to match kind of what's going on in the general kind of tech funding ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But the way the deal looks like early on, it's usually convertible debt, which is just very, very simple to administer, where it's like, they get favorable terms on your next round of funding in exchange for some cash effectively. Like it's formatted as debt, but it's never used that way. You never end up paying back interest only you pay back interest only in terms of what they get on your next round. and then after that, you are just kind of selling a part of the business in exchange for cash. It's always a good deal if the company is growing really quickly, because you take a little bit of dilution, but if you take 20% dilution, but the company grows 20 plus times in size, or sorry, 20 times in size, it's more than worthwhile to sell some of the company. Those deals, again, like, if it's an interesting company, that's great. They don't want to see a deal that kind of goes too far outside of what they're used to. Yeah.
Before we get into the kind of just the shooting the shit and chilling out, a couple questions I wanted to ask was, just like to put myself in your shoes. Like, you have now done some things that I don't know if you ever thought were possible when you were coming, when you first met with Ivan and said, let's have some ideas. Now you have money. You have people you're responsible to. You have people that work for you. What goes through your mind, like, nightly, daily? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you motivated by it? Like, what does that feel like?
One really good thing for me was that I had, so the company that I interned at and then went back to, when I interned there, it was like maybe a dozen people. When I came back, it was 50, 60 people. And by the time I left, it was like 100. Now it's 250 or something like that. So I got to see a company growing, and I really had just so much respect for the people that were growing the business. I got to really see what they were thinking about and stuff like that. That helped a lot. Beyond that, just feedback from, for us, a lot of it was Stuart McDonald. Just like, what does it look? What should you really focus on if you have to hire people quickly? So we built this hiring process really meticulously around understanding really quickly, is this theoretically a good fit? Can this person technically do the demands of the role? And then we spend actually most of our time in the application process on, is this person a good fit for a startup, and B, our startup? Are we comfortable working with this person? Are they comfortable with us?
Yeah, I guess that's a big part of it, right?
Spend
That's
so much
a
time
lot of the
Because
biggest thing.
you're working so closely
Yeah.
together, right? That it can probably go a little more unnoticed in bigger
Yeah.
companies, right? Because
Oh,
you're
man.
more distance, but like when especially in a workspace like this.
Yeah, and that's
That's
that
important.
was one of the awakenings I had in my 20s, right? You think about companies as these kind of monoliths in and of themselves, these kind of like, government type things that are just kind of like shells of bureaucracy kind of thing. But then you kind of realize when you're at a company, it's like, oh, it's just a group of people, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they're usually brought together around this kind of shared idea about how they're making the world better. And then you really have to when you're in our position now, where you got to hire a bunch of people and set up, it's like you gotta find people that are really into what you're doing, that are really because one thing you have to get over is like, you're not making all the decisions anymore, because all of a sudden, if your company has to grow and keep growing at a really fast rate, it can't all be two people. So you've got to think about, how do we bring people in? How do we make them comfortable? How do we let them know that they can make decisions? And how do we know that they're going to make good decisions? So those are the things you kind of stay awake at night about. You don't really.
It's like the relinquishing of control.
Yeah.
Trusting you're basically your
Yeah.
baby.
And you see the returns on picking good people. Like, I'm not sitting there worried about sales, because I know that if I invest in a really good user experience designer, our sales and conversion will go up. We've seen that happen. We hired an amazing, like, even junior user experience designer who had like a couple notes on how we should improve our product interface, and we saw amazing returns on conversion. So, I'm not sat up late at night worrying about sales, because I trust that our sales team is sourcing amazing deals for us. Our product team is building an amazing product. I'm really worried about, like, how are we going to find, a dozen more amazing people.
Interesting. I would have thought about it a little differently. I would have thought you would have been worried about those investor metrics, those targets, how you're hitting it. But you're saying you're confident in the product,
Yeah.
and that when you hire the right people, it reflects in all those numbers. So it's how do you find that next 12, that next 24?
Yeah, if you're just worried about the raw numbers, I mean, you're just going to be worried all the time. And you got to think a lot about, I mean, so much of what you do in any job is so much about your psychology. You know, it's about your habits, it's about how you respond to things, it's about the systems that you have in place for how you actually evaluate and deal with things. So, you know, if you're worried about outcomes, you're just going to be worried all the time. And you're going to be so ineffective in your job. You gotta step back. You know, whenever anything bad kind of happens, like, I guess we can talk about it now. Like, you know, Thomas Cook went under. You know, we had a very kind of public deal with Thomas Cook, and it's like, can't do anything about it, man. You know,
They just went under.
And you feel really bad for the people that are there, and you hope that they all land on their feet. But it's like, you can't sit there and say like, oh man, that really could have made a big deal. That could have been a big deal for us. You just gotta go like, you know, this kind of thing happens. We gotta move on, and we gotta continue just executing.
Well, running a business, it's probably universal throughout, but basically it's just problems after problems after problems, and your problems get a little bit bigger, but you get a little bit better at solving them, and you have a team to help you. And I think we touched on a lot of cool stuff about your business, about the mentality, about the culture. And you know, I just wanted to, you know, end it with some lighter notes, some just fun chats. First of all, this plant here, you have a banana tree plant in your office that doesn't yield any bananas, but it smells like bananas if you rip the leaf. This huge plant, if you're watching the video. Second,
that plant has a sister in the other room too.
I think we have 3 banana trees.
Yeah, I don't know what that third one is.
How do you? I'm trying to wrap my head around how do you get a banana plant that doesn't make any bananas?
So I when we moved in here, I was like, we need some like other living stuff around. We need some foliage. So we've been buying a couple of small plants and stuff like that. I think I mentioned it to my mom. My mom's like, you know how moms are, the most supportive person in the world.
Did she come in and disinfect your entire office like my mom would?
Oh man.
That's a yes.
But I get a call one day, and it's just, and I'm like doing some stuff, and she's just like, Plant World's going out of business. Do you want some plants? I was like, yeah, sure. And she shows up with like 2 banana trees,
an unknown tree
of whatever sort. Like basically, she had like whatever Plant World had left.
Like
Unreal.
right? Start the car.
Unreal.
Yeah,
Start the car.
Yeah.
She's running out with trees.
So that was like a wish answered for sure. Yeah.
And my second question is, how are we even here? How did that all happen? Did you just think of it one day? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think part of it, Max and I were kind of talking about maybe doing our own podcast one day.
Yeah.
More focused on just global trends and how they kind of affect the travel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had no idea what a podcast looked like other than kind of being consumers of it, but like being part and building one we thought would be a good experience to kind of make one of our own.
And you're like, well, I know
you
just
guys
the
are
guys.
doing one. It's like, how does this get done? Yeah, like we're trying to get really involved. A lot of people that join the company don't have travel experience, and I think it helps us in some ways because we have a kind of outside perspective on how do we bring in really cool stuff from like fintech and other kind of interesting tech industries into travel. But you know, it's meant that we've had to really focus on getting out to events. We have like Travel Tech TO that I host that we
really bartend at these events all the time.
That's where I've seen you before. You work at Sip Bar?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, you know what? Now that you make that connection, you look familiar from these events. Yes. Because I've definitely
we talked there. We talked at one of the events.
I've seen Dave there before, but yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's where I know you from.
What?
Wait, were you at FinTech last night?
The most.
2 of our guys were Ali and Dale were there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But so we into that, and we're thinking about doing a podcast as well, just because we talk to a lot of people to set up Travel Tech TOs. So we're like, oh, you know, we can turn that into its own thing.
Synergies.
Synergies. Well, definitely, we can show you. It's very easy. It's extremely easy, actually.
We helped a couple of our buddies do one recently, actually. You know, they came over and we gave them the Coles notes of how it all goes. And I mean, just takes a little bit of commitment and some scheduling. And
It takes about an afternoon
Okay.
to start a podcast. Maybe an evening on Amazon in advance to order a couple items if you don't
Right.
have them. But
yeah,
and then maybe 4 or 5 days to get approved.
yeah, not much. I mean, we had a majority of the stuff from musical stuff that we do, so it wasn't too hard for us to.
But
throw
can
together,
definitely
but-
show you guys that.
yeah,
Amazing.
The next thing is I don't know if I'm missing anything. Oh yeah, so you said you'd listen to a couple episodes.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there listening to one of my favorite subjects for complaining about what most people think about just in the kind of general, when you're having conversations with people about renting versus buying. I always find myself really hard on the side that few people take up, and I find it's also the side that I think there are a lot of bad arguments for that get reiterated.
So just to preface anyone who hasn't heard our second or third episode,
Yeah.
we did a rent versus buy episode from a friend that bought a condo, and he might have been a little biased. He bought a really nice condo,
yeah.
but it wasn't just him. We've heard buy from family members,
Of course.
and so it's really interesting when we came in here. You had a different opinion.
Buy used to make a lot of sense,
Mhm.
right? When people were able to put less of their disposable income towards a house, buy made a lot of sense. I think right now, if you're telling someone in their 20s to buy without actually looking at their financial situation, you can really be leading them in a really tough direction that's going to make their life just a lot more difficult. And I think a lot of the concerns with renting are also unfounded too. Like, first off, and the number one concern you hear with renting, you're throwing money away. You're burning money. Which is just not true. Like you don't go grocery shopping and think, oh, why aren't you farming those tomatoes? You're just burning money. Like
I think
it's
that though.
it's ridiculous.
True.
It's like you're paying for something. You're paying to live in this place, and the people who are actually paying the mortgage on that place, they're paying loads and loads in carrying costs. They're paying usually a lot. They're going to have to pay loads in land transfer fees. Usually they're not able to recoup all of that in rent. So you're paying a pretty steep discount on what you would actually pay to be living in that place anyway. You are paying to live somewhere. I mean, that's pretty fundamental.
But you're saying the gap in rent versus the fees is what you can invest? It's the difference between the two?
And a really big thing, and there are multiple points to that. I mean, one thing is you shouldn't have all of your assets in one basket. Like for you to take all of your money as a kind of mid-20 something and put it all into one asset. And man, look at it, like houses don't always go up.
Detroit.
Not even Detroit, man, right here. Like new housing prices have gone down a couple of basis points the last year. It's not the kind of always bright story that you hear from people. And even when you hear the always bright story, it's like housing prices have doubled over the last 20 years. That only means like 3 to 4% per annum. You can easily get that in any. You can get that in an ETF.
And what
any
about
balanced
inflation?
fund.
What about
inflation?
Yeah.
You're not really beating inflation too much. The big thing for me, these aren't the big points for me. The big point for me is leverage. I think a lot of people don't understand financial leverage. It's like if you're taking your $90,000-$100,000, whatever you have, usually a lot of people start a lot lower than that, and you're levering it 10 times over. That means a move of 5%. Imagine there's a 5% correction. That's wiped out half of the money that you have in on that house. If you sell it, you've all of a sudden lost half of your money. It's going to take you years to recoup all of that. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that going into it. They think, okay, I'm getting a load of money for this. It's going to be great. I don't have to, realize the value of that money until much later.
Because it feels like a bank account. That's what I thought. I was like, what? Instead of paying rent, I'm just kind of putting it into this bank account, which I can get back later.
Yeah. People don't realize the kind of hidden costs around transferring land as well. Like it's really tough for people. Another big point, I noted all my points down because I'm always upset about this.
I love it. We need to hear this though. Like who else needs to hear it but our generation that soon is going to be purchasing? Like do you rent, I'm guessing, then after all this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to invest in a really smart way. And if you look at it, if I had done, it's been about 10 years now, if I had gone out and bought a house, I wouldn't have been able to start a company. I would have been tied to this really high mortgage payment. I was much more flexible. It's really easy for me to move places. I had to move from Scarborough to Toronto. It was the easiest thing in the world. I would have paid tens of thousands of dollars to do that otherwise if I owned a place, or I would have had to incur all kinds of extra cost around renting my place out and then going back to rent somewhere else. And then beyond that, I've been able to actually build an acumen for investment, which I think is another thing that people often don't touch on when they're talking about this.
When you're turning towards
like an acumen for investment, by which I mean like, if you've got all of your money in a house, you're not understanding what it means to think about an investment portfolio.
So did you do that through self-study, or was someone like kind of telling you what to do?
Yeah, a lot of that was through self-study. A lot of it was through just stuff I learned just from friends and stuff like that. A lot of reading.
Did you lose any money in Bitcoin like I did?
I didn't lose any money in
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Net even.
I didn't make very much money in Bitcoin either, though.
Dude, I for a guy, I passed all 3 CFAs. And
oh, wow. Good for you.
if this isn't a testament to how much it doesn't actually teach you how to invest,
Sure.
it just teaches you technical.
Right.
Which is great.
Which if you had a guided mentorship or whatever, you could apply it. But I remember this bubble is coming, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of think I understand this. I'm like, it's not any of these CFA metrics. It's really just advertising and hype. And I was like, I can understand that. So I'm like, okay, what are the next going to be hyped things? And I was so focused on hype and advertising, I missed the entire bubble. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't see the entire thing was about to deflate. So I found a few that I thought was going to get hyped up through, a big deal, like Ripple or something was going to get a big deal with banks or et cetera. And I picked a few of those, and they grew. And then the bubble burst, and I lost almost the entire amount I put in there. So I was like, right, CFA doesn't make you smart at all.
Yeah.
Experience does.
Experience. But yeah, like, when you talk about opportunity cost, what's I find is often lost is it's not just the opportunity cost of that cash going towards like something that's literally sitting there decaying. But it's also just the time that people are able to spend saying, okay, I'm able to put aside, 20-40% of my salary to put into a balanced portfolio. What's that portfolio going to look like? What directional investments do I want to actually make in companies? This is a huge body of knowledge that people are neglecting by saying, like, I'm going to put literally everything I have plus 10x more into this, house or condo or whatever it is. So I'm very much on the renting side. I don't think you should ever worry about burning money. If you're worried about burning money, think about all the money you're wasting not growing your own tomatoes. Like, it's
yeah, because you could probably have a tomato plant for 50 cents.
That's right.
And you're spending probably maybe $50 on tomatoes a year if you're a big tomato guy.
Probably more.
If you're
maybe more.
Yes.
It's interesting, but like, both my parents are accountants, and it might be just a generational thing. They saw success in houses.
Yeah.
They were able to continually upsize. It was a safe store of their money. They never saw a downside to purchasing homes. And in fact, it worked, I think, is what you're saying. It could work, but it could also...
Yeah, it could work, but I mean, you look all the way back to the 50s, you would have been better off with a diversified portfolio than having a house. People say, like, houses are worth 50 times more than they were, 50 years ago. It's like, well, yeah, everything was worth so much less back then. There was hyperinflation in the 70s. It's the kind of thing where it's an easy thing to put a number on, but you could just as easily say the same thing about most decent investments.
So I know this might be completely unrelated because I want to come back to this, but does this have any sort of application to depreciating stuff like cars? Like leases, buying?
Yeah.
Or is that unrelated?
Sure. With cars, it's really tough, it's similar in the sense that you just have to do the math, right? Like for me, I probably would have been on the side of leasing a car, but I just absolutely loved. I had these great childhood friends that only bought Hondas, and they buy one every like 15 years and drive it into the ground. I just love that idea that they ate the depreciation, but they didn't pay anything on service because they'd never break any parts and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, let's do an experiment and see if that works. So in 2012, I graduated in 2012. In 2013, I bought my little Honda Fit, and I've literally never replaced a part on it.
That's nuts.
And
I have a car that's 5 years old, and I was just in the shop, $500.
It's crazy, man. Hondas and Toyotas, man, like you actually can get some value out of them, especially if you buy them a couple of years old. If you're going to buy a car that you think you're probably going to incur some cost on, you're probably better with a lease.
Yeah. Like
there's
a
some
sports
cars
car
that you
or
can do
like,
pretty well. Exactly. Something where you're really going to take a hit on depreciation. But I mean, the main point is just like, you just got to do the math, right? Yeah.
No, it's interesting, and I'm surprised we haven't dove into stuff like this because all of our friends are choosing lease or buy car, rent or buy condo. We're the exact age.
He's the first advocate in a while that I've heard for renting.
Well, we've heard creatives be like, rent, you need flexibility.
Yeah,
but they weren't like, rent, the numbers make sense.
Yeah.
They're like, rent, let me paint a picture
from like a
this is important
smart perspective.
My other question was, what then do you feel about financial downturns? Just kind of wait them out?
Well, yeah, there's so much to do with the context too, right? Like, the bright side of any downturn is that it's a great opportunity to buy typically. Usually a lot of stuff is going to be depressed beyond what it should be. For us, from a company perspective, you've just got to be prepared for it. You've kind of got to have your war chest together. You've got to have a really good buffer. It's if you think about it as a time of like death and rebirth, you've got to think what's coming out of this, what's going to be really valuable after whatever's going on here.
It could be a constructive process. Like a lot of people made money on the recessions.
Of course.
It was the people kind of playing with fire that get burned, and the companies that don't have the buffers, like you say.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite like analysts is definitely Kyle Bass, just because he's
sick name.
He's always on the short side and always looking for like this is going to be your opportunity when things get overhyped. And I think you've got to be able to get really psyched about interesting new things. You've got to be able to sell what's interesting, but you've also really got to understand like what are the fundamentals here, what is overblown. How can we protect ourselves against something bad happening? Like speaking as the company, you can obviously just apply that to your own personal kind of finance as well. But yeah, I've always loved the people that just have a really realistic view of things. Like listening to him talk about Bitcoin is really interesting because it's like, yeah, fundamentally the technology is transformational. It's really cool. But there's probably an overvaluation in this thing just based on everybody
hype.
And their mother wanting to have it kind of thing. I think that's kind of the line you've got to walk.
For the person that say maybe isn't as analytical as you, just for the general, Robbie or me and or David, and we're maybe not able to, or we just don't have the drive to look at it like that. What do you think of stuff like Wealthsimple or like throwing it in an ETF and just holding it kind of deal?
Great. Wealthsimple is awesome.
Love Wealthsimple.
My wife uses Wealthsimple because I don't want to touch her books, and she loves it, and she's kind of what you're describing, but for finance, like she's a physiotherapist,
right?
Doesn't have a lot of financial acumen and like probably really doesn't need to, but Wealthsimple has done an amazing job of packaging a balanced portfolio in a really accessible way, in a way that's also very transparent. One of my main issues with having a wealth manager is that they have a lot of incentives around presenting your portfolio in a way that kind of helps them present themselves as providing.
They got their own personal
and
agendas.
to take risks and to make that quick buck.
Wealthsimple is an amazing kind of not neutral platform for sure, but at least platform for helping people understand what's going on, and setting you up to have a balanced portfolio.
Even if you just want to use it as a basic savings account,
totally.
You get way more returns out of putting money into Wealthsimple than you would any other bank that you set up with having a savings account. And it's crazy. And
but
you
like-
see everything. It's super
But it's
easy,
not a
super
savings
transparent.
Totally.
But it's
you
not.
have to, you have to understand that if shit's going whack out there, maybe pull your. How easily can you get your money out of Wealthsimple? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's like a 10-day, like up to 10 days or whatever it is.
I know.
You know? But like,
I'm just saying it's not a bank. You have to,
it's
make that
not a
clear.
bank, but also it's like if you want a little bit more of return, you want to get into investing.
But keep
you
an
don't
eye
really
on the
know which-
market. And
Yeah,
what do
for
you
sure.
do then? You're around this energy all the time. It's probably a little bit affecting what the decisions you're making.
I'm still paying off my student debt.
Okay,
So that's the only thing I'm focusing on right now.
that's a grind.
Yeah.
So good luck with that. But after
Thank
that,
you.
it's training you to put money away somewhere. So your
Yeah.
lifestyle's adjusted to having a percentage of your income
That's
go
when I'll
somewhere.
go talk to Max, or I'll talk to Jake
Yeah.
and figure it out.
But it's nice being around
Yeah, yeah.
this type of. That's
No,
like another.
Yeah, you got a good resource
It's
here.
a good sponge, yeah.
Another benefit to being in a startup is just being around generally exciting, bright
Yeah.
people. Or maybe in a company it's more diluted because they have 10 people doing the
Mhm.
job that maybe one person here needs to do. And that's not a generalization, but I mean that is a generalization. But it's cool that we got to touch on that and all that. And I don't know what the time is on the podcast here, but we can do our final segment.
We're at about 18 minutes over.
18 minutes over. Okay, let's do the final thing, which is just a little tidbit, a lighthearted tidbit to wrap things up. But
Okay.
you ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
No, not really. I've seen a couple episodes.
There's these like bro rules, and I should really Google what they were called because I never get them right.
You always reference it, but you're like, oh, there was this one thing. I think it was called this.
It's just basically we give these rules like bro rule, like number 114,
Oh, like the bro code.
bro code.
Bro
That's
code. I think
it.
It's the bro
Is
code.
that it? Okay.
How many people have been like, it's bro code every time they hear me say bro rules? But it's just like he gives a simple tidbit
Right.
kind of response to bro issues.
Mhm.
Like
I don't think that many people watch. Was I Met Your Mother that big of a show?
good question.
I don't know.
I think it was.
I know
But
it's watched, yeah, I
so
know the
we
show.
we are thinking of a similar code, but just for people in their 20s. And the topic today we wanted to ask you about, because I knew you have tattoos, and I didn't know if you did or not. But
no tattoos.
as a CEO and someone who's in the business hiring and stuff like that, I wanted to talk about tattoos in your 20s. And is there still a stigma around them? What's the deal? Should you get them? Why didn't you get them? Why did you get them?
Mhm.
And that sort of general vibe, so we can put a tidbit
To the
piece of
tattoo.
advice on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a really big qualitative aspect to it, right? It's like if you got something tattooed across your forehead, you're probably not doing too well. But like, I love it when people have like a tattoo that tells a story about some point in their life. I think that's great. In terms of like where it is on their body, I think that's probably the biggest thing that you've got to worry about.
Just like decision-making skills.
Yeah. If you got tattoos all over your hands, you might worry, and this is someone who's like working on integrations. You might worry about how that might be looked at by someone outside of the company.
Other cultures and things.
Other cultures and things like that. I'd just say, really think hard about what it means to you and obviously like what you think it might mean to other people. But I don't think you should have like a rule against tattoos or anything like that.
Is there any reason why you don't have tattoos?
I've thought about getting tattoos before, at different points in my life. I've just never kind of pulled the trigger. No.
Just nothing quite stuck out.
Yeah,
as
nothing
meaningful?
was enough. Nothing really kind of made me think enough. Like, oh yeah, like that's something that definitely represents me.
And then
Fair.
what about your tattoo decisions? Artistic, meaningful, mix of both?
A mix of both. I have 4. The first one I got was my buddy was trying to learn how to do stick and pokes. So I let him do one on my ankle because I didn't think anyone would see it.
Seen all the time.
Seen not that often, only when I'm in low top Converse as opposed to the high top Converse.
Like today.
Like today, yeah.
So where is
Probably
it?
most days in the summer.
It's just a little triangle though. So
yeah.
I
And a lot of people have that. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about that one. I have one on my right forearm. That was the second one I got. It's my family crest. I don't know if the camera can pick it up.
Your family crest is a hand.
It's a severed hand. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
If you go way back to Ireland, there's a little village or township or whatever, and they're kind of with their chief exploring new lands, and the chief basically told the people that were exploring, whoever, and they were in these boats and they kind of came around this river bend. He's like, whoever touches the new land first gets to claim it as their own. So the story is that my ancestor went in this kind of boat race to touch the land, wasn't winning, and so he did what any competitive person would do that wants whatever it is that they're going after, and he just cut his hand off and threw it, and it landed on the beach.
You're kidding me.
No, that's the story.
And that was a technical win.
Yeah. That's
I
like-
remember you telling me this story.
Yeah.
You have
You,
told me
I thought it
that.
was
you'd
a
be pretty
crazy
sore
story.
if they like caught you on a technicality.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
the hand needs to be connected.
Subsection 1, it's still
Yeah.
got to be on your body.
I mean, like, who knows how true it is? I like to think it's very factual, but it's like to be able to be on a boat, have someone else. He probably had someone cut his hand off for him and throw it, because I mean, it's the right hand. And I feel like if you go back then, no one was left-handed. Everyone was trained to be right-handed.
Mhm.
And what if he missed?
Oh,
Cuts
that would
the other one
suck.
off?
Put it
Yeah.
all on the line.
But that's,
Yeah.
no risk, no reward.
So-
I remember you telling me that. So you got a tattoo
I got
on
that one. That's a meaningful one. The next one I got was kind of on my left forearm. It's just a bit higher up in my shirt, so I can't show it. But it is of the Vitruvian Man, just a bit simplified. So
the what? Sorry.
The Vitruvian Man. You know Da Vinci's sketch of the
Oh
the
yeah, yeah. Okay.
the only thing I kind of removed from it was the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the penis. Thought it would
Yeah.
be weird to have that on my arm.
Yeah.
So I removed that. And that one, I just finished reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da Vinci, and that's a fantastic book if anyone wants to read that. So it's a meaningful one.
Just more like, but like an artistic
Yeah,
kind of.
because if you peel back all the layers in his paintings, it becomes really scientific. So it's a lot of it is art built on the scaffolding of science and what Da Vinci did. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That can be applied to, at the time, marketing and advertising, where you kind of look for a fact. You try to build some sort of really creative point from that fact or that statistic, or even this business that we have now, or that you guys have, that I'm lucky to be a part of. And then the last one I got is it was originally Big Ben, and I have a matching tattoo now with two of my other good buddies. And we had gone on a Euro trip, and we had been partying in London, England together. Didn't get the tattoo in London. We all came back, met up for drinks, had a couple too many drinks, walked by a tattoo studio, said, let's get a matching tattoo. And now I got this horrendous.
Oh, it's horrendous.
It's very good work. It just,
Yeah.
I wish I didn't get it where I got it. It's kind of off-centered on my tricep, coming onto my bicep a bit. And it's like very good line work. The tattoo is really well done. I just wish I put it in a different spot. I mean, now I just tell people it's the Summerhill LCBO Tower.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah.
I like to drink.
Yeah.
So that tattoo, was that
That was the last one.
That was the last one. So you thought you'd learn, like.
Yeah, you would think that you learn, but you don't. I think that's just like it wasn't peer pressure, but you get a bunch of guys together and no one wants to back out and be the one that didn't do it. And maybe it is a family thing, because I did basically cut my hand off by getting that. You know what I mean? I had to prove
That's
a point.
deep.
I'm a bit stubborn, so I was like, I'll get this tattoo. And I went first. I remember going first, so they didn't back out.
That's the thing is, that's the problem, is you should have made them go first, because
But then you can't leave your buddy like that.
I know, but then you wouldn't back out. But like they could have backed out after you got it, technically. But the question is when you're getting these tattoos, you're not thinking, okay, this is affecting employment. Like there used to be a stigma around tattoos.
Yeah, I've never thought it will affect any of my employment
I don't know what
options.
your parents said to you growing up, but it was something along the lines of, don't ever get them, ever.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
They're
My
for
mom's
criminals.
got a tattoo.
Huh?
My mom's got a tattoo.
Okay, so maybe a little bit progressive of a parent, but
I think it's progressed as, same way of workplace culture, like
Yeah.
you look at what Dave's wearing right now, just
well, this
kind
is
of
startup
jeans
chic. This is startup chic.
But
Yeah.
but even
Jeans and a polo.
Very, very simple.
Running
Jeans and Lacoste.
shoes,
Yeah.
We go flip flop sometimes.
You still got to wear business casual to the office at big companies. But tattoos, what I'm thinking at big companies, are starting to become normal. Like
Yeah.
managers
Probably,
have them and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I think if we're gonna boil it down to a tidbit, you're saying that it's not the tattoo,
It's the placement.
it's the placement.
Yeah.
And like I guess that can be extreme side, like don't get
Yeah.
a dick on your arm.
Yeah.
But like
But I think it's not the tattoo, it's the placement's a good one because, as you said, it's decision-making skills.
It's decision-making
I
skills.
think part of the decision making though too is what you're getting too. You know, it tells a little bit about yourself,
All
where
this
you get
qualitative thing,
yeah, right, and what it is too.
Because I think I'm a decision maker, but I went with a less meaning tattoo, just artistic on my ankles. Thought it looked cool from a movie. Wanted to look rock and roll. We'll wrap this up right now. But
I've got to leave right after this.
the tidbit I think would be, if you're kind of if you're too young, like maybe fucking hold off on that a little bit.
I went to U of T for 3 years and I almost got the U of T on my back, and then I transferred to Western. So that goes to your point. Imagine if I had the U of T on my back at Western.
Like maybe legitimately run it by somebody that's not your buddies.
Or wait on it for a year. If you still
Wait
have the
on it
same
for a
idea.
year. I waited on mine for almost a year. And I think that's the tidbit. I think the only thing I can say is the longer you wait on a tattoo and you still want it, the better that tattoo is. I think we have a bit of an instant gratification culture. The tidbit for your 20s, it's not that anyone's going to judge you on your tattoo based on stigma. They're going to judge on your decision-making skills. So just try to make a good decision. Take more time. Choose it. Ask people like you would any major decision that's going to affect you for life. And then you can end up looking pretty dope, because I like your tattoos and they have meaning. And I haven't seen the Big Ben one, but
you don't need to see that one. The Summerhill Market one.
But I'm going to see that one. We're going
I'll
to
show
see.
you after.
Yeah. Anyway, other than that, thanks so much for taking that much time. If we'd paid the market rate for it, we probably couldn't afford it. But thanks so much.
But we would have rented and not bought his time.
Glad to hear.
Is there anything you guys want to plug? Any last tidbits you didn't get out?
Yeah,
for the
we're
podcast?
hiring. If anyone's really interested in what we're doing, come on by. Yeah.
Any skill sets in particular? Any areas in particular?
All of the skill sets. We just want people who are excited about what we're doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And your website?
JoinSherpa.com.
Awesome. If you're traveling, join Sherpa.com. If you're looking to work with these cool dudes, and 10 more in an office, a really cool office, reach out. All their info will be in the show notes. And on that note, Robbie,
We'll see you next
Tuesday.